right now. That's how mad I am.
I do. Man, you are angry.
I just want to make that be known.
Tune in to Lidline Sports every Monday, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Lidline Sports.
Hey, y'all. It's Traffic Jam with Kareem.
Thursday at 4 p.m.
Hey, Traffic Jam. Rainier Avenue Radio. Download the app so you don't miss out what's popping on Crackers Shining. It's your boy, Cream the Dream, on another beautiful week on here on Traffic Jam in Seattle. I hope you guys doing what you're supposed to do, being supposed to be. I got a good show for y'all. A lot to talk about. You know, Kareem the Dream, keep up with everything.
Get your entertainment news with Kareem on the Traffic Jam, Thursday at 4 p.m.
A new law is helping people save more money on prescription drug costs. You may also be able to save with Medicare's Extra Help program. Your premium cost can be zero and your out-of-pocket expenses are low. Who should apply? Single individuals earning less than $23,000 a year or married couples earning less than $31,000. Even if you don't think you qualify, you should still check out this program. Visit ssa.gov/extra help. Medicare costs are covered by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio,
your community radio station.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Juan Cotto looking live from the shores of Lake Washington here in Leschi for this February edition of WIAA Primetime. I have my public policy and policy director, Stripes Cotto, on my shoulder. And someone's got a little friend. She is here today, and she and I have been holding down the fort while Clemente Cotto has been in Colorado visiting some schools. And he's over at the University of Colorado Boulder today. He did not run into Deion Sanders, but he did check out the engineering department and had a wonderful time over there. Should be coming home a little bit later on this evening. And the girls are away right now, so Stripes and I are holding down the fort this holiday season. And with me, of course, is Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Athletic Association, and Mick is no stranger to being on the road and visiting places, and it's always great to spend some time with him. Mick, great to see you.
Hey, good to see you. I'm Newport High School today watching some, Garfield and Roosevelt girls are finishing up now, so good game, 10-point game going in the fourth, and then the Seattle Prep and Garfield boys play next. So we got a couple of good ones here.
And basketball is in the air. We have the Sea King District Championships coming up, and February Madness, as we call it in the state of Washington, is starting to break down, and seeing all the great players and all the great teams and some of the best high school basketball in the country. And we can say that very, very confidently. Just look at the number of players that we've put out who are playing in the collegiate and the professional level. And so, Mick, I know that you're going to be entertained, and thank you so much. Just a couple of house cleaning opportunities here. The Call to Conscience Black History Month Museum is open Tuesday through Sunday this month, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. until the 28th. Get your tickets now at calltoconscience.world. We've talked about how great an exhibit this is. And if you want to learn more about the history of the Black community in Seattle, please take time to bring your family to that. And then, of course, Rainier Avenue will have continued coverage of the District 2 3A Boys Basketball Championship this Saturday at 6:30. The teams are still to be decided, and I know that my good friend Tony B, and I know that my good friend, the Guru, they have had a wonderful season calling basketball games. I love listening to them. And it is so much, again, this is some of the best basketball in the city. And then we will talk about this at the beginning, and we will talk about this at the end. If you grew up here in Seattle in the 1980s, you know over at C89 Radio our own DJ Nasty Ness. He was a legend in this community. Unfortunately and regrettably, his circle of life has ended. The untold legacy of DJ Nasty Ness. And I just remember being a high school kid, going to a Catholic school, living way out in South Seattle, turning my radio antenna so I could get C89 radio because he was playing the great hits of the day. And certainly Kenny G and a number of young Seattle groups and people who have entertainers who made it big time owe a little bit to DJ Nasty Ness. We will see you on the other side. So, Mick, welcome to WIAA Primetime. Great to see you. And obviously talking about legends, this is still recognized as Black History Month. We have seen some, and I did not put this on the question list, and I do not want to spend too much time going into politics. However, we have seen some conversations that have come up out of this particular administration, and I will not ask you to comment on them other than the fact I will ask you this. Are you having conversations? What are some of the impacts that you guys are having to take a look at the WIAA, if any, on some of the things that have come up here in the last month out of the White House?
Yeah, I mean, the one that hits us the most directly is the recent executive order around gender identity and transgender athletes. And so it's I actually have a meeting tomorrow with OSPI and the Attorney General's office to hear where they're at and what they're doing. Currently, the advice coming out of OSPI is to continue with following the state law, the Washington Law Against Discrimination. But that could change. I know there's been 3 states that have already changed their rules based on their Attorney General's recommendations. And if you've seen that executive order at all, which we've had the opportunity to read a few times, it says to work with your state Attorney General's office. I mean, they're the ones who interpret law. They're going to work with the U.S. Attorney General on it. So we're in a holding pattern. Nothing's really changed for us other than we know something's going to change when to be determined.
There have also been certain stands that the White House has taken against DEI programs. Does that impact anything in athletics in the state of Washington or the activities in the state of Washington? Or let me get to this too. I mean, in regards to both those questions that I've just asked you, is he proposing just buffeting this back to the state, or are these decisions that and you said it at least with the conversation around gender identity, that he says work with your Attorney General's office. I mean, will our Attorney General's office be able to come up with a way to supersede that particular piece of legislation and others around DEI?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're waiting on to find out. Like, it's going to be a court action that's going to take it. So for us regarding DEI, not a whole lot has changed. I mean, it appears when the term DEI is being used, at least by the federal government and others, they're talking more affirmative action, from what I understand of affirmative action. Right? And, we have a lot of DEI work going on in this. We're trying to be inclusive, include everybody. We serve our mission statement in the law that gives us authority to run high school athletics and middle school athletics. It talks about all children. So we're continuing with that. How people want to frame it, how they want to term it, semantics, we're not going to get caught up in that. Our job's to take care of kids and to bring communities together for competition. And that's exactly what we're doing. If we can keep kids connected to their education, keep them graduating, I don't think there's policy out there that wants to negatively impact that. So a focus of our work is on our kids.
It's interesting. The president of Bloodworks Northwest, Kurt Bailey, my leader of our organization, we had a conversation last week, and I want to say about 10 days ago in one of our leadership meetings, he outlined our new values. And if you've been to Seahawks headquarters, when you walk in, they've got the 4 values of the Seahawks up at the front entrance, and we had a value sheet. We had a vision statement and a mission statement, which was one of those pithy statements that was put together, I'm sure, by a consultant. But the mission statement and the vision statement fit, but our values were almost 80 words. He condensed those down to 4. and integrity, courage, responsibility, and some different things that we put. But it's 4. And I told him, in my estimation, that's in terms of DEI. Now we have figured out our organizational culture, and how we can go ahead and spread things through the community. And it seems like some of these conversations around DEI, as you may have touched on, are still in the 1960s and 70s, and they're looking at quotas and numbers. And, I think that there is a semantic issue, a definition, but a number of our folks in the organization want to go out and make statements that we are, to offset the presidents, and we've made the decision we're not going to do that. We're not going to get into a political conversation, but our organization's values in terms of how we serve the community, they remain unchanged. And I think that's probably how you probably taking a look at it right now, or you can kind of share with us what your thoughts are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of the 225,000 students and 295 school districts, there's a lot of varying opinions. We've been dealing with this on the gender identity, transgender issue, coming out of COVID. There's different opinions around COVID. I mean, that's just, we serve everybody. And so for us, we're not going to get into whether a perfect example is somebody asked me about the game stoppages. So we implemented, based on some really horrific interactions that were racially charged to start, but then expanded beyond, racial comments and statements, just to inappropriate behavior in general. We instituted the game stoppage. And I was in a meeting with a regional district, and they're like, Mick, can you give us an update on the DEI stoppages? And I'm like, what are DEI stoppages? Like, we got game stoppages to stop inappropriate behavior in real time so we can continue to play without harm. So whether they're racially charged, whether they're sexist, whether they're just inappropriate, vulgar, crass language, whether it's overly physical or cheap shot, it doesn't matter. There's certain things that are allowed in our competitions, and there's certain things that aren't. And we're not valuing one or another. We're just saying, hey, kids need to be able to go out and compete hard. We understand there's going to be some physical play, just can't be cheap, and it can't be personal. And let's go. And off we go play. And so, I think there's some of that. We're trying to do the same thing. We don't want to get caught up in the politics of this. We're getting pulled on from every direction. Our rep assembly members are getting lobbied literally every day. First time a lot of them have experienced that. I said, oh, geez, you should see my email. Like, that's, no different than a lot of other positions of leadership. You guys no doubtly get it. I mean, any entity that's public that works with the general public, people got their opinions, and they're entitled to them, and it's how they're expressed, and then we go. But yeah, there's not quotas or requirements. The only quota we have is proportional representation around allocations, and we're even discussing that. Is those the best teams, or do we do it geographically? So yeah, we're trying. It's difficult, but in the meantime, we're going to celebrate kids, and we're going to take care of all kids, and what that looks like is going to be decided by courts here in the next few months.
Never a dull moment in the WIAA. When I was over at the Call to Conscious Black History Month Museum last week, Tony's done a phenomenal job, Mick, and maybe we have to get over there. Once again, February 1st to the 28th, it is the Call to Conscious Black History Month Museum, 4916 Rainier Avenue South, which is usually the HQ. I guess it still is the HQ of Rainier Avenue Radio, but Tony B has turned it once again into a historical museum. It's just bigger and better than it has been. I believe this is the third year, Daniel, that he's done this, and maybe it's the fourth, but nevertheless, he has really put together some unique exhibits. And one of them, Mick Hoffman, is the letter jacket of one Tara Davis. It's hanging from the stairway or the upper barrier up that he has, and I saw that. And I was thinking to myself, geez, I mean, here's a young woman who has represented so much about athletics in the city of Seattle, and she's the current director of athletics in the city of Seattle. And her legacy to sports, not just female athletics, but to boys athletics, and the role that she has had. And currently, I believe she is one of the executive members of the WIAA, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, she joined us last year, and I think, again, you asked me a lot of questions, and we don't track our history by demographics. And so this was actually I appreciate the questions and the detail to them. I was actually sitting with her before I came in here. She hooked me up with Wes, who's running the tournament here. And they got me a room to be able to do this. But I think TD is the first Black female on our executive board. I believe that's an accurate statement. And so, every time I talk to her, she blows me away with another factoid, right? I mean, I didn't realize how good she was when she was younger. And then she was just at the UW game. They had a reunion game. They made I think it was the Sweet 16 when she was there. And I mean, there's a lady, I don't know when she sleeps because she's run the middle school for all Seattle schools.
Mm-hmm.
She helps out at all the high school stuff with Pat. She's on our board. She's on a bunch of our committees. It's amazing what she does. So, yeah, I mean, you talk about a true jewel or asset of, that we go back to this DEI stuff. That's one where we need her, not that we give her a position. Like the deal is not to overuse her and find other people who can help support that work. So, yeah, no doubt that no surprise she'd be part of that museum, which, if I could say, Tony B, thank you. Last year, me and a handful of staff members went down. He did the tour. A whole mess of them went down last week. I was out of town for work, but they went down there and they loved it. And I think you're talking about the Metro League exhibit, which is a new addition. So I need to get down there next week to check it out because they're raving about that exhibit.
Mick, it's the things that he's able to pull together. However, I did leave him a message that there is one athlete who went to Western Oregon and played baseball, Juan Cotto. He will definitely get him some pictures of the Western Oregon Wolves center fielder that he missed. But I will work on that. I will lobby that. Being that I'm a lobbyist, I will lobby that for next year. Let's share some of the historical highlights of Black athletes in Washington State High School, and we don't need to go into the Paulo Banqueros and the ones that Mick, I'd like you to let's talk about Tara Davis and some of the others that come to mind who have really made an impact and shaped the life of athletics through our state, who've made a contribution to our kids.
Yeah, I went through our Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we don't have them in there with their demographics. So I'm looking at pictures and reading and calling up a few people basically on how they present, right? And so if I forget somebody, if I'm out of line, I hope somebody would correct me because I don't do it out of I do it out of ignorance, really, not out of any type of mean spirit. But 2004 was our very first Hall of Fame class. And Kevin Griffin actually started it for us. He only worked for us for a few years, happens to be a young Black man at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so he saw the value in honoring people and took the initiative to start that. So one, we owe him for us even having this in our association, believe it or not. And it was only 20 years ago, which is amazing to me. But Joyce Walker was one of the very first inductees. And, I don't know her whole story other than when I'm walking around Garfield or at a Metro League and she walks in, you can tell it's royalty. And then when I start reading about what she did as a player, let alone as a coach and everything else, it's pretty awesome. And so maybe you can give us more detail on her.
All I know is that you hit the nail on the head. Joyce Walker, who played for I believe she went to Louisiana State and had a stellar career down there, All-American, one of the great basketball players. Mick, if we have a Mount Rushmore of basketball players from Washington State, I guess Jamal Crawford, I guess Paulo Banquero now, but certainly we can argue who the third and fourth would be, but Joyce Walker would be on that Mount Rushmore. She has to be. And as you said, when we have Daniel, you can correct me on this. Joyce and I on Rainier Avenue Radio have done about at least 8 to 10 basketball games together over the years. When you go into a gym with her, Mick, you definitely understand that she is royalty. And she is respected by both the men and the women, and she's respected by the older generation and the younger generation. She is a basketball savant. She is so much fun to listen to. She is so humble and someone who you enjoy working with. And we have such a great time together. Her attitude and her personality is infectious. Excuse me. And I'm choking up at just how incredible it is to work with the likes of Joyce Walker on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Now, I heard a rumor. Did she perform with the Globetrotters at one time at all?
She did.
Yeah. Okay.
She performed with the Globetrotters, and I would say that was in the late 1980s, early 1990s.
Okay. And I just want to let you know, I turned my computer volume down a little bit because Coach Roy is getting ready to take his Garfield, and when you didn't put him in the top 3, I didn't want him mad at you. So make sure you do a game down the road.
Well, lots of conversation, boy. I tell you, I ran into Brandon Roy, and we talked about that UConn University of Washington game and the terrible foul call that got him kicked out of the game for a few minutes, and old Rudy Gobert always teased him about it and said, yeah, when you went out, we reestablished ourselves. And what a player that Brandon Roy was, and save for his knee, probably still is.
My mom, who's passed, was a huge Trailblazer fan. We grew up in Westland, Oregon until I was in high school, and then moved to Vancouver, right, when I was in high school. So I know Portland better than Seattle. That's why I love you giving me my homework assignments so I can get better educated on the history of Seattle and Washington. But with that, I was with her at the playoff game against the Mavericks. He hit that huge three. It was a 20-some point comeback. And people in that arena stood and cheered for over 5 minutes at an NBA game. I mean, it was an incredible moment. And he was jumping around like he was a 16-year-old kid. I mean, it was so cool to watch him play. They had season tickets, so I'd go to games with her quite a bit and to watch him play. So, yeah, I mean, those are the things that, somebody like Joyce Walker, she created those memories for people. Another one that stood out to me was in 2015, Greg Brashears was the first, what appears to be the first African-American or Black coach inducted into our Hall of Fame. And so as I was asking TD about him today, I said, hey, look at these questions Juan threw at me. Man, you got to help me out because I'm doing my best trying to do homework and all that. But I'm pretty ignorant to a lot of this history. And she says, you got to have Greg on your list, right? So she, off top of her head, that was one. So I don't know if you can fill in some details on that, but I'm like 5 league titles or state titles and
a graduate of the O'Day High School. And he's on the O'Day Wall of Fame. Another man who, after his coaching career, and I think you knew this, I mean, he was certainly the district administrator, and I think he was the same position that Tara was. Influenced so many kids, ran middle school, but he also, and this is a big deal here in Seattle, he ran High School Memorial Stadium, now known as Leon Brigham Field. But for him to work with the coaches and coordinate the scheduling of that, it has to be very meticulous. And you have Monty Kohler and so many of these coaches who put that schedule together so meticulously in the fall. And Greg was there the entire fall. I mean, he was at just about every game you would go to. Someone who was so committed to the kids in the area. And once again, a tremendous track coach in his own right, a great athlete at O'Day when he went to school there, but certainly a person who never left the community and served for many years until his passing.
Yeah, and a great example of why the inclusion and diversifying leadership is so important. Because one, he was high quality and very good, excellent at what he did. But one of the things Tara shared with me today, she said he was one of the first people that looked like me that I saw, beyond an athlete, beyond even a coach, but in a leadership role with what he did with Seattle Public Schools. And look what she's doing now, right? So all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can do that too, is how she explained it to me. So again, why it's important. That's why this staying out of this political debate. Let's get the best people, put them in leadership who can teach and be role models for other. And whether they're green or 8 feet tall or male, female, or somewhere in between, who cares, right? If they can get the job done, let's put them in positions that they positively impact others, and his legacy continues on through her and others.
And Mick, he made the kids behave. He was definitely an authority figure. He made the kids behave. He made the coaches behave. And I remember my good friend Gavin Anderson, I got into a little dispute about a call, and I called Gavin over and said, Gavin, I can't get too animated, but because Greg Bashir will come down here and he'll tell me to calm down.
Yeah.
and Gavin said, Juan, I appreciate that because he'll get on me too. So he definitely commanded the respect and really did a good job of really getting everyone to act like a respected athlete and participant in our activities.
Which is what we need to get back to as a whole, right? I mean, rather than fighting each other on every single opinion, let's get back to what we agree on. And what we agree on is we've got to improve the behavior so we don't lose the opportunity for our players. So, yeah. So another one that I found that was interesting, Clarence Acox was a fine arts, and he got inducted in 2011. So again, somebody who I know very little, only what I read about, but to be able to go in fine arts, and again, appearing to be the first African-American inductee into our Hall of Fame for fine arts.
Mick, it's interesting because we talked about this, and this goes back to my conversations with Mike Colbreeze. The WIAA stands for the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. Correct. Many people think it's the Athletics Association. It is the Activities Association. When you think about it, and we've talked about all of the activities that are involved in that. And one of them is the music and the jazz bands at Garfield High School, the jazz bands at Roosevelt High School. And Clarence Acox, who was a phenomenal teacher. And, and I actually had to go sit and watch Clarence Acox and a couple of his proteges, because coaching football and how you teach football is very, very similar to how you teach music in a band and how you put a jazz band together, because people are playing different elements, but it ends up being the same thing, and how you coordinate it and how you coach it and how you work on the communication and how you sync everything up to where it acts as a unit. And no one did that better than Clarence Acox, from the individual lessons he gave in terms of the instruments and teaching, all the way down to teaching the music, which is so much like the individual aspects of the position and teaching plays, then bringing it together in group and team. He was a phenomenal teacher and someone who had tremendous impact. And then the proof's in the pudding with all of the different awards that Garfield and Roosevelt won when he was there.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I appreciate you catch me up to speed on the details. There's another gentleman. He's on the east side. His name is Mike Morgan. He works with Proactive Coaching, goes around, speaks for Bruce and Rob now. But he was a phenomenal football coach and band director. So it's interesting you say that, because he did both. And his band over at the State B tournament is legendary for their performances. And he told me, when I asked him about it, he said he runs it just like his football team. So
we are up against that time where we have a little bit of a Profit Center update for Rainier Avenue Radio. So this is WIAA Primetime, our weekly discussion of athletics and activities in Washington State with Mick Hoffman, the executive director, on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
If you or a family member are 55 or over and need nursing home level care, but want to keep living where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no copays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org, Elder Place.
Hey, community, listen to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church every Sunday, 10:45 a.m.
We invite you to get up and call a friend and tell them that New Hope is on live. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Now, our pastor, the Reverend Dr. Robert L. Jeffrey Sr.
Everybody clap your hand, come on.
Listen to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church every Sunday, 10:45 a.m.
Mga kaibigan, ito po si Kuya Bert Kawili.
And this is Miles Salvador from Australia.
And I'm Norb Kawili, also known as Norbcam.
Kung gusto niyo po ang latest news and events from the Philippines at yung local Filipino community, PLM Radio po.
We play Filipino music and interview guests from all around the world.
And I'll keep you updated on the latest Seahawks and sports news.
Kaya always tune in. PLM Radio every Tuesday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue Radio App.
And in YouTube and Facebook. Salamat po.
Sediment cleanup of the lower Duwamish River has begun. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the members of the lower Duwamish Waterway Group, which includes King County, the City of Seattle, and Boeing, have begun sediment cleanup of the lower Duwamish Waterfall Superfund site. This important environmental project will address sediment pollution and help restore the health of the Duwamish River. Starting on the waterway's upper reach, construction activities extend from the South 102nd Street Bridge down straight to the Duwamish Waterway Park. Over the next 3 years, in-water activities will occur from October to February, ending in February 2027. Visit ldwg.org to learn about the upper reach cleanup and sign up for email updates.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
Really good advice from Daniel Bellis. Really good advice from Daniel Bellis. Do not cuss out your fellow drivers on the road. As seems like now the weather has warmed up. I was telling a friend of mine yesterday, it sure is nice to feel weather in the mid-40s right now. It was very, very nice and little wet the last couple of days, but today I think the high's closing in on 50 degrees. Spring is right around the corner. And after 3 weeks of living in my refrigerator, it sure was nice to feel 48-degree weather the last couple of days. So appreciate that on your community radio station. Daniel, thank you for keeping us all sane on the roads. And Daniel, a lot of your voice in those readings, man, you're almost becoming the spokesman for Rainier Avenue Radio for crying out loud. There are a lot of commercials by Daniel Bellis, so have him a little nonsense on that. Mick Hoffman, the executive director of the Washington State Interscholastic Activities Association, Stripes Cotto is here this afternoon with us today. I'm perched up on Dad's shoulder, Grandpa's shoulder. This is Clemente's cat, although the people at bloodworks.com or Bloodworks Northwest feel she is my cat. And when you clean the cat's litter box, and when you feed the cat, in essence, it is your cat. But Clemente Cotto gets to live the life of Riley, being in the Cotto family here at Casa de Cotto. And so today we have Mick Hoffman here. We're talking about Black History Month. Just a couple of updates on the screen here. First of all, the Call to Conscience Black History Month Museum. It's open on Tuesday through Sunday this month. Excuse me. 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. until the 28th. So what is known as the shortest month of the year certainly is one of the most dynamic months in our country, and we study the history of the Black community and the exhibits that Tony has put together. If you're interested in learning more about the history of the Black community in Seattle, please, it is a great show, and we encourage you to come down. There will be basketball. The Rainier Avenue Radio will broadcast the Washington State or the Washington District 2 3A Boys Basketball Championship this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. The teams are still in the tournament process, so we will find out who those are. But as you can see up there on the screen, it's going to be some good ones. It is going to be some good ones. And I'm not sure if those games leading into it are horizontal or vertical, but either way those are lined up, you're seeing some really good contests at the boys level. It's going to be a really good championship, and I'm sure that if you have the time to get over there, if you love basketball, they're going to be over at Bellevue College, which is a unique place to watch it. But nevertheless, if you can't get over there and you have your multiple devices like we do in our house, streaming and showing things, maybe throw it on Rainier Avenue Radio and catch Tony B and the guru, Bill Ellaby, who's an interesting character, a former All-State basketball player here who ended up going to the University of California. His son, C.J. Ellaby, most recently was a star at Washington State, ended up playing for the Portland Trail Blazers, and I believe is playing in maybe in Europe right now. So catch the guru. He is another basketball savant and certainly someone who makes it fun to listen to. Going back to our conversation, and we are having a Black History Month conversation about sports in Washington State, or activities in Washington State with Mick Hoffman, and he did a little bit of homework for us. Mick, let's talk about some of the evolution of coaches and talk about some of the influential coaches who are African American, who are Black people, and let's talk about some of the ones that have influenced kids from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Al Hairston would definitely be one. You know, he got inducted. We inducted him in 2017. He was at a few schools and had quite a bit of success. And so I would say he would definitely be one that had several coaches, you know, young men who played for him become coaches later.
Al Harrison, of course, was at Garfield High School. He was at O'Day High School for a little bit and was there. And like you said, coaching was not just his passion. It certainly was a vocation. It was a calling, and he influenced a lot of young people. Very successful, won some championships. But I think if you sat down and talked to Al, the influence he had on these young people. I have never met a happier person with a serious. He's one of those people that, you know, I was when I was younger, you know, you're intimidated by some of those people that you see coaching, but when you sit down and talk with him, he's just so friendly. He was a head coach at Seattle University too. I don't know if you knew that. He was up there at Seattle U when Seattle U made the decision to go back to Division II and drop down a little bit, and he helped to make that transition and had some successful programs up there. But someone who will always undoubtedly have tremendous influence and a legacy in this community. Al Harrison was a great man and a great basketball coach.
Yeah, you know, another one today that we see is Mark Keel, football coach out of Central Kitsap. Mark's the president of the Washington State Football Coach Association. So, you know, here's a guy who's aspired into leadership, and his peers recognize his skills and ability, and he is a phenomenal leader with that group.
It was there was a television broadcast 2 years ago. The young tight end at I want to say it was at the University of Arizona broke the record for most catches in a season, and it was this kid. It was a guy named Rob Gronkowski second, and Mark Keel was third. And I had to call Mark Keel immediately. I said, "Hey man." They have your 39 catches. The 39 catches that made you famous. You're now third behind Gronk, and he gave me a couple of noogies over the text message there. I will say that I just from a personal perspective, when Sarah and I lost our second child in 2011. And I had an opportunity to go to the Washington State Football Coaches Association. Funny that you mentioned Kevin Griffin. It was the NFL Football Coaches Association. I was selected. Kevin Griffin had selected me to go to that, representing the Seahawks. And the Seahawks organization was very gracious to Sarah and I during that period. 3 weeks after losing our child, we were on a plane to Canton, Ohio, and where we spent it there. And we flew through Chicago. And Mick, we got on the plane in Chicago, and it was one of these little planes. Unfortunately, we've seen them too recently in these accidents. But Mark Keel and several coaches from the Midwest were on that flight. And I tell you, Mark had heard about what happened to Sarah and I. He hugged me when I got off the plane. And he is a gentle giant. He is such a good friend today. But he was so gracious to my wife. Clemente was 3 years old at the time, and he was such a spirited personality. And I know the kids are so fortunate to have had them as their coach over there. And when we got on the plane, Mick, and he and Sarah at that time was concerned that I was putting on some weight, and Mark said to me, "Hey, Sarah, don't worry, on this team, on this plane, your husband's just a scat back here." he still wears an extra large shirt. There's some 3 and 4 triple X's on here. So we got on the plane, and I was sitting across from Mark, and the pilot's voice came on, and there's a balancing system in those planes. And they said, "Hey, guys, we have to tell you that the plane is out of balance, so we're going to have you guys, some of you guys adjust and move over to the other side." And you should have heard the laughter, and you should have heard the comments that Mark was yelling at some of those. But he told Sarah, it's not your husband. You don't have to worry about him. It's him. And what a great guy. Mark, but seriously, a tremendous football coach, someone who made his way to the NFL, played for the Seahawks, and ultimately, ended up out there out at Kitsap, and he's done a tremendous job.
Yeah, I get to see him Sunday morning. They have their clinic going this weekend, and so we're going to go in and meet with their executive board on Sunday morning early. So, yeah, good man, great leader, does a good job coaching his kids over there. So
he's been doing it for a long time now.
Yeah. Another one that I've really got to watch quite a bit, and I'll get to see later tonight, is Coach Bethea. Yeah. Last year I was out at some of these tournament games, and some of the officials came over and they talked about the contest interruption that we had mentioned earlier. Said, "Hey, we really appreciate the WIAA, taking action on trying to stop some of this behavior." He said he had the opportunity to go in and explain it to the Metro coaches. And some of them were upset that contests were being stopped when kids were using language that they might commonly use with their friends or at home and all that. They were having this raging debate that was getting a little heated. And he said, finally, Coach Bethea stood up and said, "Listen, you don't understand. These are the kinds of things that get used, a lot inappropriately. And so this is good for us, and it's good for our game, and it's good for our kids." And he said, instantly, debate over. Like, just the influence and respect that they had for Coach Bethea as young coaches throughout the Metro League, that ended the debate. And he said it was really amazing to be there. So, you watch him work. He's a hard guy on officials. Mm-hmm. He coaches his kids hard. And he cares like crazy. I mean, he's missed some games with health challenges and all that. And he's back faster than probably what he should be. And I watched him the other day coach with Jamal Crawford on his bench, and how he's incorporated him in there, and you could tell there's this genuine love and respect for each other, and a guy who just wants his kids to be successful. And so I think he's another one that's in a few years he's going to be a legend. Currently he's just highly successful.
It's interesting, and in this conversation around DEI and what it is and what it isn't recently, as this certainly has come to the surface. But let me ask you this question in terms of coaches and coaching. We have a number of coaches who tend to gravitate towards the inner city schools. I remember my good friend Tom Boehner out at Bothell, and I was at a coach's clinic, and you referenced coaches clinics, and that was my favorite part of being a coach, was going to the coaches clinics and learning and hearing from different coaches. And I had met Tom Boehner, but it was the first time I got a chance to chat with him when I was the head coach at Highline High School. And Tom said to me, he was so excited that I got an opportunity to be a head coach, but he said, you always have a shot at coming and coaching me, because I will always have a position open for you at Bothell. And I said, "Oh, why is that?" And I said, "And how come you're not at Evergreen?" And we had a really good conversation about it. But he said to me, "Juan, you're the kind of guy that will be successful anywhere he goes, because I can tell you can coach in the inner city, and I know the challenges there, and he certainly does, coming from that area." But he said that I want you to know that you're a coach that gets looked at that would be able to coach anywhere. What qualities do you think it takes to be able? And I'm sure Mike Mathey could do that. I'm sure he was speaking to me as if I was Coach Mathey. I'm sure that he was speaking to me if I was Coach Bashir. What are the qualities you think they'll be able to coach from the inner city to a suburban type of school?
Well, I think you have to be able to, one, you got to be able to love your kids and meet them where they're at. A lot of guys go into different settings and they have one way that they've coached, and they're looking for kids to fit into that mold. And you have to meet them where they're at. And there's going to be different challenges in any setting. No setting's easy, and coaching is never going to be easy. And then you also have to be able to adapt to what kind of talent you have. I mean, and that happens over longevity, even if you stay at the same place. And so I think the biggest thing is you have to be good with people. You got to be able to interact in any setting. You have to be able to adjust yourself. You can't expect everybody to adjust to you. And I think people who find success, they go in there and they, generally care about the people they're serving, and they find out what's important to the people they're serving, and then they adjust to meet those needs and whatever that is. And so, a guy who's really, really good at that, when you talk about in more of a suburban outlying area, Tony Davis. So I don't know how well you know Tony Davis, but out there at Tahoma, was a highly successful coach, assistant superintendent now. Was athletic director for a long time, football coach, did all kinds of stuff. He's on our board as well, executive board, phenomenal board member.
Pretty football player back in the day too.
Yeah, that's what I heard. He's pretty good. He's getting all his shoulders worked on and knees, and he's bionic man anymore. But he's one of those guys that when he speaks, it's like, oh man, it seems so obvious and simple. And again, he's a guy who wants to know the why. Why are we making this decision? What are we trying to accomplish? And I think that's what translates into any setting, is when you're understanding, your why, but you also understand, why you're taking the actions you're doing. You're not just doing what you think you should do. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And that because you've talked to enough people who have a full understanding of that environment or whatever you're doing. In Tony's case, he can do it in Tahoma, and he can do it at a statewide perspective on the board because of the questions he asks. So the funny thing about Tony is when I got this job, John Miller said, "Oh, hey, by the way, I'm retiring." I'm like, man, you called me about applying for this job. You pushed me to apply for this job. Now you're leaving? Are you kidding me? You're the football guy, and football's a big deal. And he's like, I got this chance to retire. I'm getting married. I got to go for it. And so I called Tony Davis, and I said, "Hey, Tony, I don't know what you got going, where you're at in your career, but what do you think about coming to work for us?" So we had a few conversations. We finally got into what we're going to be able to pay him. And he's like, "Oh man, Mick, sounds like a great job. I can't afford the pay cut." So we finally got him on. About 3 years later, we got him on the board.
Oh man.
So he's phenomenal. But there's a guy doing exactly what you said, right? He can fit in any setting, work with any people, because he leads with his heart. He doesn't lead with his ego. He truly cares about people, and he really is trying to take care of everyone without sacrificing, what he believes in. So,
Mick, tell us how the WIAA recognizes the contributions of and specifically, obviously, Black History Month, and so many people get it. So many people need an opportunity to be recognized. But how do we recognize and honor the legacy of Black athletes in the state of Washington?
Yeah, we try to do that kind of across the board. And that was one of the recommendations when I came in. Pat McCarthy actually was the board president at the time. And he said, "Hey, one of the things we need to do, Mick, is our diversity committee has kind of lost its steam. I don't know what we do differently, but that would be really good." And so, one of the things we've done since I've been there is we've really gone out to try to meet people. And through that, we've recruited board members, right, to people be interested. That's how we got Tony, Stephen out in Chilean. And so we've been intentional in getting people interested and educated on what WIAA is to see if their communities support them coming in. As far then when we went to work with our DEI, we created a DEI committee and said, hey, how do we do this? How do we honor like across the board? And we had a really good makeup. And, you know, their suggestion was not to be too intensive with any one group, you know, like especially, hey, whatever you do during February, you should be doing throughout the year for every other group. So we've created a calendar essentially where we acknowledge and recognize the different days, different honor, the different weeks. But as far as individuals, we have not done a ton. We try to do that through our Hall of Fame, and that's, you know, going through the names is interesting. As far as people who we believe identify as African American, we went from one every other year, every few years, to a couple a year. So, you know, the year Tara went in, Bruce Harrell went in as a mixed race, Asian and Black. I did some homework on him. I didn't know his story. What a great, I mean, here's his mom was a child in internment camps and they lost their business. And now he's the mayor of the city that he was taken away from. And so, you know, that's probably an area we could do more with in general. Our biggest challenge, and not as an excuse, but our challenge is, and we're running 3 major state tournaments this week. We got 13 people. We had 8 volunteers in the office helping stuff packets and doing that. So for us to be able to add on a kind of a promo department for that is a challenge. And so what we probably need to do is prioritize and make partnerships with groups that can help us, that actually know that history and can help promote it. And that, you know, I see that as the leader of this group as a way to enhance relationships with maybe groups that don't feel that connected to us. So that was actually my takeaway in trying to answer that question.
Well, one of the more unique personalities that I've met, and Mick, I was such a big fan of the 1978 Rose Bowl team at the University of Washington when I grew up here in Seattle, and obviously those guys had a connection to us because a lot of them were from here in the Seattle area, and certainly the middle linebacker of that football team that beat Michigan in that unbelievable game, Bruce Harrell, whose choices he narrowed his final 2 choices were to either stay home and play at the University of Washington for John James or go to Harvard and play football there. Which, you know, and I tease him about that, and you know, and then to have NFL interest, and he said, you know something, I'm not doing what everyone else would do. I'm going to go to law school and to have a very, very successful legal career. And, you know, and at the time, you know, the NFL salaries really weren't all that great. Yeah. For him to have accomplished that, and then obviously his political career, a very unique story in the Seattle area. Certainly something that Tony has highlighted in the museum a little bit, but to have known him, to have coached football, to have discussed football with him, to discuss politics the way I do, he's a phenomenal story, no doubt.
I mean, yeah. I mean, just think about that. His family had a thriving business. His grandparents, they lose their business. Their mother gets taken away to an internment camp at the age of 9, and he is the mayor of the city. I mean, of one of the major cities in our country, and to be thriving and leading that change on top of everything he did to get there. I mean, that is a truly amazing story. Because so many people would give up, and the bitterness that has to be, I mean, there has to be anger and frustration when you really think about what his grandparents lost, and for his mother to get him to where he has a chance to go to Harvard. I didn't have a chance to go to Harvard. You know, I could have earned that opportunity like he did. And so, yeah, I think that's what's important. And so how do we lift those stories? And that's where we need partnership. We have a platform. We could tell some great stories, and we did it during COVID when we weren't running tournaments. I don't know if you saw much of that, but we tried to find great stories of either current or former participants, coaches, etc., and do some profiles on them. And for us, it's a time resource that we have to get a little more innovative to find a way to do more of that, because that's what people need to know.
I'm very fortunate, Mick, because I went to college in a school that was in a farm-growing community that was in Western Oregon. Center field are the Western Oregon Wolves.
Monmouth.
In Monmouth, baby.
Yep.
and one of our baseball practices, the sky turned orange, and they explained to me, Juan, we are burning the annual fields. This is how we burn the fields to turn them over to start the new crops. To which I replied, we don't see that in Seattle. We occasionally we see some burning, but it isn't controlled. It isn't for this purpose. It was really, really interesting to be there with kids who were from such different backgrounds and who not only had unique upbringings, but also from a political perspective. I went to school with a lot of people who were conservative and who were in the opposite party. They were Republican, and I was a liberal Seattle kid, urban. Parents were union representatives, and I was a Democratic kid. But the conversations that we had, and to have conversations, to really develop a unique understanding of issues, and certainly the concerns over things that you hear about, such as critical race theory and DEI and these different things. I understand how they can really create not only goosebumps and hair raising on some of my friends who I played baseball with, but they certainly have an opposite view of what those conversations mean. However, Mick, we are in a time, and we are now with an administration who has kind of stood up to some of this, and they're not going to support those efforts in schools, and I think that the president has come out and said that quite publicly and quite candidly. As an administrator who has been involved in this for so long now, are these recognitions still important, and how can we do them in a manner that is palatable to what the conversations around DEI are right now?
Yeah, I think the best way we can do it is through people's story. We talked about the mayors. We can to explain to people, like, imagine just sitting, if I'm back in the classroom right now teaching U.S. history, and then we're doing World War II, and I say, could you imagine, how many of you have a family home or business right now? Could you imagine a truck pulling up and telling you and your family each get a suitcase full of clothes, whatever you can get in there, and we're going to take you down to the coast and put you in a cabin without heat, and you're going to be there for the next 18 months. And when you come back, somebody else might own your house. Like, just tell me what you think that feels like. Like, that's a conversation that you could have. Now, if we could be fortunate enough to have Bruce Harrell come in, am I saying his name correctly now? He said Harold, so I heard you.
Yeah.
Okay. But you imagine being able to say, like, look, here's somebody who actually lived that. So get people to feel it through their own experience, rather than taking a curriculum and saying you should feel this way. I think we can do it through storytelling, because at the base of everything, we're all human. We all have people we care and we love about, and we can relate those experiences to ourselves in some way, even if it's not a way of life we've actually walked or our family has walked, but to tie it into what could happen to us. I think that's a way to have those conversations, because if the real intent is to have people just understand what happened and why it happened, and then how we never make it happen again, right? People got to feel that. You got to get to the emotion. That's the thing about sports, right? Is it's emotional. So we remember. And I think we can do that through education, through storytelling, and real life experiences, rather than telling people what they should think, make them feel it.
Mick, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your candor, your thoughtfulness, and your willingness to do this. We always appreciate you doing this on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. One more time, Daniel. I'm going to close out sending our deepest thoughts of respect to the family of our own DJ Nasty Ness Rodriguez. He passed away this weekend. He certainly will be missed, but his legacy will certainly live on. He was a very, very special individual. Like I said, growing up in the South into Seattle, turning our antennas to the north so we could get the bitter stream of C89 radio, and to hear Kenny G and so many of the local talent, and to hear some good old-fashioned soul music. He was certainly someone who captivated us when we were young, and will captivate this community for quite some time. So all of our thoughts and prayers with the family of Nastiness Rodriguez. Thank you so much, Mick, for your time as usual. And this is the Black History Month special on WIAA Primetime on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world.